Okay, so in this video, we're going to talk briefly about how corporations are formed. All right. So I mentioned in the previous video that corporations, the vast majority of corporations, are formed under state law. So the first question is, what state are we going to incorporate in? Right? And you can shop. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be where operations are going to be. It is for many companies, but it used to be that most corporations were formed in Delaware because Delaware had very favorable corporate law and also courts filled with judges that were very favorable when corporations were sued. All right. So there's some logic into selecting a state of incorporation, but generally you can select any state. You do have to secure a name and making sure that it's not already in use. The document that actually incorporates the company is called the Articles of Incorporation, and that's filed with the Secretary of State. And then the first meeting must be held. Right. And once the first meeting is held, bylaws are adopted, then you have a corporation. All right. So I referenced at the beginning of chapter 14 that there's this inverse relationship between the complexity in forming an entity and the level of limitation of liability. So since the corporate form has the strongest limitation on liability, it's the most complicated to form. All right. And so it is possible to do something wrong. All right. Improper filing, improper compliance with this particular provision of the corporate code. So when those happen, we have to look at what the deviation was. All right. And if the deviation is minor, we call it a de jure corporation, which really means it is legally a corporation. So if you have some minor defect that you didn't comply in totality with the corporate code, but substantially you have met all the requirements, then you have a corporation that cannot be attacked by state or third parties. What does that mean? Well, really what we're talking about is attacking the corporate form itself. And so when that happens, shareholders could be held liable, right? But in a de jure corporation, that can't happen. All right, de facto. Similar, but this is a bigger departure from the statutory requirements, right? These can only be, the corporate form can only be attacked by the state, and if that happens, then what they would typically do is dissolve the corporation. Right? Those are fairly technical points. Let's talk about a corporation by estoppel. All right. So this is not actually corporate law. This is an equitable remedy, right? Which means, let's say I'm starting a corporation. All right. I'm a promoter. Promoters are the people who form corporations. All right. They take the corporation from not existing, and they're promoters until such time as the corporation is recognized after the first meeting when the bylaws are adopted. All right. So let's say during that process, I represent my business as a corporation before it legally is. and something goes wrong. I walk into a bank and ask for a loan in the name of my corporation, and something goes wrong, right? And later, the bank sues, right? Well, I can't say there's no corporation because I walked into the bank, represented my corporation as one, and then later said, we didn't make it, we're not a corporation. Well, the courts are going to allow that creditor, that banker, to treat me as if I am a corporation. All right, so that's how corporation by estoppel works. All right. Old saying goes, you need money to make money. And the corporate form is the best, has the easiest time raising money. All right. And the two main avenues for raising money are stock, all right, which is fractional shares of ownership. We know what that is at this point. And then bonds, which are effectively loans to the corporation. It's not uncommon for municipalities to issue bonds. Companies will issue bonds for expansion. And between stock and bonds, corporations can raise a lot of money in a relatively short period of time. All right. So corporations do have powers. They have express powers, and those are found in the articles of incorporation or the corporate bylaws. All right, are in the state corporate code. All right, generally, corporations can do whatever the articles of incorporation say they can do, or whatever federal or state applicable law allows for them to do. Those are the corporate express powers. Implied powers, this is a negative inference. These are powers that exist to accomplish corporate objectives, and they exist to the extent that they're not illegal, right? So implied powers may not be formally articulated anywhere, but there's no prohibition against those implied powers, and corporations are entitled to do that to the extent that it furthers the corporate interest. Ultra vires doctrine, all that is acts beyond the corporation's express or implied powers are illegal. All right.